U.S. American commentator who works for Russian state TV. Dimitri Symes, who was an advisor to Donald J. Trump's first campaign, and his wife, Anastasia Symes, are accused of violating U.S. sanctions. The Justice Department indicted an American commentator for Russian television on Thursday as part of a broader effort by the government to crack down on Russia's attempts to influence American politics ahead of November's presidential election. Dimitri Symes, who was an advisor to Donald J. Trump's first presidential campaign, and his wife, Anastasia Symes, were charged with violating economic sanctions against Russia for their work for Channel One, a state-owned television network. The indictments come as the United States has been cracking down on Russian efforts to spread content from Russian broadcasters among American audiences, often by disguising its origins. Mr. Symes, who owns a home with his wife in Virginia but currently lives in Russia, has hosted a political talk show since 2022 on the network 4 nights a week on the network and another on Sundays. Mr. Symes was an influential person in Washington for years, hosting frequent lunches at his think tank blocks from the White House. He would gather government officials, academics, and journalists during the uneasy post-Cold War era. The topics often turned to issues of Russia's relationship with the United States and NATO and Vladimir Putin's ambitions to rebuild Russia. His indictment comes a day after 2 employees of another Russian state broadcaster, RT, were indicted on a charge of spending nearly $10 million to have pro-Russia messages spread from a Tennessee company that created and publicized commentary from right-wing, pro-Trump influencers. The Biden administration has been making a broad push against what it says is a concerted effort by Russia to influence the fall vote. American intelligence officials have said Russia's president, Mr. Putin, considers November's election critical because of Democratic support for Ukraine, which Russian troops invaded more than 2 years ago. Documents released by the Justice Department show that as part of the effort, Mr. Putin's office devised a plan to target swing state voters in favor of Mr. Trump and against further support for Ukraine. The Justice Department charged both Symeses with violating the International Emergency Powers Act, the law that President Biden has used to impose an array of punitive sanctions against Russian officials and companies because of the war in Ukraine. Channel One, a state company that is among those under such sanctions, paid the couple more than $1 million, in addition to providing a car and driver and a stipend for an apartment in Moscow. Ms. Symes, a jewelry designer, was also charged with money laundering and accused of helping a prominent Russian businessman, Alexander Yudadov, evade sanctions by purchasing art and antiques for him and keeping them in their home near Huntley Bay. FBI and other agents began searching the home on August 13, seizing furniture and artwork over 4 days, Mr. Symes said in an interview on Wednesday before the charges were announced. They took a lot of the furniture, he said. They took practically all of the paintings and icons, which are where now? Who knows? He added that the art pieces had long been in his possession. We got most of them before we moved to this house, he said. Most of them belonged to our parents. How could they be of any concern to the U.S. government? The indictment against Ms. Symes cited a number of artworks, including a 19th-century painting by the German artist S.C. Welsch, Lake of the Four Cantons, and a bronze sculpture of Minerva by the French sculptor and painter Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, who designed the Statue of Liberty. Mr. Symes did not immediately respond to a request for comment after the indictment was announced on Thursday. In the interview earlier, he defended his work with Channel One Russia, even as he understood it would raise the ire of the administration. I assumed that what I was saying on Russian TV would not be to the liking of the Biden administration, He said, but I also assumed that as long as it was just my opinion and was presented as such, it was not something for which I could be prosecuted. Mr. Symes, 76, emigrated to the United States from the Soviet Union in 1973 and later became an advisor to President Richard M. Nixon. From 1994 to 2022, he served as the head of a think tank Mr. Nixon founded, now known as the Center for the National Interest. During the 2016 election, Mr. Symes introduced Mr. Trump for one of his only major foreign policy addresses. Sergei Kislyak, then the Russian ambassador to the United States, was in attendance at the speech. He and others have raised questions about the government's myriad investigations linked to the Russians, saying they target work for news.